In March 2025, a U.S. federal court sentenced a 35-year-old man to life in prison plus 30 years and ordered him to forfeit over $6 billion in drug proceeds. That man is Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, El Menchito, the son and co-founder of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, alongside his father, the now-deceased Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes. He ordered the murder of more than 100 people, personally butchered bound men with a knife, pioneered fentanyl trafficking into the United States, and directed the shoot-down of a Mexican military helicopter. His father built an empire. His son turned it into a war machine. So let's get into the story of how El Mencho's son became far more dangerous than the man who raised him. The story begins in San Francisco, California, on February 14, 1990. Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez was born in San Francisco County, California, Valentine's Day. But there was nothing sentimental about the world he was born into. He also holds Mexican citizenship, making him a dual national of both the United States and Mexico from the start. His father, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, was not yet the feared drug lord the world would later know. Born into poverty in the state of Michoacan, El Mencho grew avocados and dropped out of primary school before immigrating illegally to the U.S. in the 1980s. The man who would one day have a $15 million bounty on his head from the U.S. State Department started life in the fields. El Mencho grew up in a poor family that cultivated avocados. He had 5 brothers: Juan, Miguel, Antonio, Maureen, and Abraham. He dropped out of primary school in 5th grade to work in the fields. At the age of 14, he started guarding marijuana plantations. That last detail matters. At 14, the man who would one day lead one of the largest drug trafficking operations in human history was already standing watch over drug crops. A few years later, he made his way to the United States, to California specifically. His first documented arrest happened when he was 19 years old in 1986, when San Francisco police busted him for drug-related crimes. In 1992, he was arrested in SF again for selling heroin to undercover officers. He pleaded guilty in 1992 and received a 5-year sentence. After serving 3 years in a Texas prison, Oseguera was deported back to Mexico. After his deportation, he returned to Mexico, where he served as a police officer in Cabo Corrientes and Tomatlan in the state of Jalisco. However, he eventually left the police force to continue his drug trafficking activities and join the Milenio Cartel. Now here is where the family tree gets interesting. Ruben's mother, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, is the sister of Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, a former leader of the Milenio Cartel and Los Queenies. El Mencho didn't just marry into a family, he married into an operation. The CJNG flourished in significant part because of its close affiliation with the Queenies organization, which is the primary financial support network of the CJNG drug trafficking efforts. The Queenies organization is composed of multiple members of the Gonzalez Valencia family. The relationship between the Queenies organization and the CJNG is cemented through both intertwined drug trafficking and money laundering dealings, as well as familial relationships. So by the time little Ruben, El Menchito, was a teenager, his father had climbed from avocado fields to the hit squad of the Milenio Cartel and was preparing to build something of his own. A faction led by Oseguera Cervantes joined with Eric Valencia Salazar, alias L85, to form the Jalisco New Generation Cartel around 2009. And Ruben? Born in 1990 in California, which gives him U.S. citizenship, El Menchito allegedly joined his family in the drug trade as far back as 2007, when he was just 17. While other teenagers were finishing school or planning for college, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez was learning the family business: cocaine, methamphetamine, and the logistics of moving it across an international border. According to Mexican government sources, Oseguera Gonzalez acted as the CJNG's second-in-command, just below his father. This was not a symbolic title. The moniker 03 reflects his relevance and closeness to the upper ranks of power within the CJNG, with 01 being El Mencho's designation and 02 that of his son, Oseguera Gonzalez. El Mencho built the CJNG, but it was his son who ran its day-to-day drug operations, oversaw its sprawling meth labs, and began something his father had not yet fully pursued, something that would kill more Americans than any other drug in history. If El Mencho was the architect of the CJNG, El Menchito was the general contractor, and he chose to build with fentanyl. The U.S. Department of Justice made this point crystal clear at his sentencing. In 2013, Oseguera Gonzalez was one of the first contributors to the fentanyl epidemic in the United States, pledging to do it big and build an empire from counterfeit OxyContin pills laced with fentanyl. That phrase, "do it big," came straight from trial testimony. In 2013, the fentanyl crisis had not yet taken hold. Americans were dying from heroin and prescription painkillers, but the synthetic opioid wave was still just a ripple. According to trial testimony, in October 2013, Oseguera Gonzalez made plans to do it big with counterfeit OxyContin pills, just before the fentanyl epidemic began in the United States. According to witness testimony, the defendant said in 2015 that he was building an empire with fentanyl. He was not simply trafficking drugs that already existed in the supply chain. He was actively pioneering a new product line that would go on to kill tens of thousands of Americans each year. The DEA itself stated that Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez pioneered the manufacturing of fentanyl in Mexico to help build his father's Jalisco cartel into one of the world's most powerful drug syndicates. The fentanyl was just one chapter of a staggeringly large drug trafficking operation. According to court documents, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, known as El Menchito, 34, led the CJNG for nearly 7 years in Mexico and oversaw the importation of multi-tonnage quantities of drugs into the United States. In addition to other CJNG operations, Oseguera Gonzalez is responsible for trafficking more than 50 metric tons of cocaine and supervising drug labs that produced more than 1,000 metric tons of methamphetamine in Mexico. Let that sink in. More than 50 metric tons of cocaine. Over 1,000 metric tons of methamphetamine. The operational scale under El Menchito's direct supervision was industrial. This was not some regional drug runner moving kilos across a river in the dead of night. This was a multinational narcotics manufacturing and distribution enterprise that would rival the GDP of small countries. And the profits? Judge Beryl Howell ordered Oseguera to forfeit $6 billion in drug proceeds. $6 billion. That forfeiture figure alone dwarfs what most drug lords accumulate over entire careers. In 2019, Kyle Morey, the head of the DEA team tasked with locating El Mencho, stated that he believed El Mencho had a net worth of at least $500 million, and he could also be worth over $1 billion. The father was believed to be worth somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion. The son was ordered to forfeit $6 billion. That disparity tells you everything about who was actually running the operation at its peak production levels. The CJNG under El Menchito's operational leadership was not just a Mexican problem. CJNG's criminal activities generate billions of dollars annually. The group traffics drugs to the United States, Australia, and Canada, as well as to many countries in Africa, Asia, Central and South America, and Europe. And those billions flowed through an elaborate system of money laundering supported by Los Queenies, the financial arm of the operation led by El Menchito's own uncles on his mother's side. The CJNG's control of critical infrastructure supercharged these operations. CJNG's de facto control of the port of Manzanillo in Colima, Mexico, allows the group to import precursor chemicals to produce fentanyl and methamphetamine. CJNG also profits from extortion, fuel theft, kidnapping, illegal logging and mining, migrant smuggling, and timeshare fraud. While his father was the face of the organization, the ghost that nobody could photograph, the Phantom of Jalisco, El Menchito was running the mechanics of a drug empire that was flooding every continent with narcotics. And he was protecting that empire with something his father had rarely deployed personally: extreme, calculated, hands-on violence. El Mencho was feared. El Menchito was savage. The U.S. Department of Justice painted a grim portrait of El Menchito during his trial and sentencing. According to statements made in court and trial testimony, Oseguera Gonzalez ordered the murder of more than 100 people, some of which he murdered himself. More than 100 people. And that is only what the U.S. government could substantiate through witnesses and documents that survived a world designed to leave no trace. Oseguera Gonzalez backed CJNG's criminal drug trafficking empire with an arsenal of weapons, and by committing and directing heinous acts of violence, he brutally killed 5 people who owed him drug money and personally shot a rival cartel member and a subordinate. The details of how he killed those 5 men are harrowing. Prosecutors laid it out in their sentencing memo. In April 2015, Oseguera personally butchered 5 bound men who owed him money for drugs sold in the United States. According to an eyewitness who testified during the trial, he used a half-moon-shaped knife, slashing each man's throat one after another while they were bound and unable to move. When he was finished, he asked for a clean shirt. That is not the behavior of a man operating under the pressure of necessity. That is someone who has embraced violence as a language. But the incident that truly separates El Menchito from his father, the one that drew international attention and shocked even seasoned military analysts, happened on May 1, 2015. On the 1 of May 2015, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel carried out a series of attacks in Jalisco, Mexico, and 4 adjacent states to prevent the capture of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, their suspected leader. The operation began early that morning in Villa Purificación, where 4 Mexican Air Force and federal police helicopters spotted a CJNG convoy protecting El Mencho. As one of the helicopters flew over the convoy, the CJNG members shot it down using rocket-propelled grenade launchers. 9 law enforcement officers died as a result of the attack. This was the first incident in the Mexican drug war in which organized crime groups shot down an aircraft, and whose order brought that helicopter crashing down from the sky. Oseguera Gonzalez directed the 2015 attack on a Mexican military helicopter that was pursuing Oseguera Gonzalez and his father, the top leader of the CJNG. The helicopter was shot down, allowing Oseguera Gonzalez and his father to evade capture, while killing at least 9 Mexican service members and permanently disfiguring at least 1 other. Oseguera Gonzalez's men used an Iranian-made rocket-propelled grenade and a .50 caliber belt-fed firearm to shoot down the helicopter. Both weapons were painted with CJNG and a pixel camouflage pattern unique to Oseguera Gonzalez's hitmen. That signature camouflage pattern was not standard military issue. It was El Menchito's brand, a calling card stamped onto weapons of war. The sole survivor of that helicopter attack was a federal police officer named Ivan Morales Corrales. Morales suffered third-degree burns over 70% of his body and underwent 15 reconstructive surgeries. In December 2015, then-President Enrique Peña Nieto awarded him the Police Medal of Merit. For his bravery and resilience, Morales eventually testified at El Menchito's trial in the United States, providing first-hand testimony of the carnage that day. Morales' testimony allowed a jury to find Oseguera Gonzalez guilty of trafficking cocaine and methamphetamine, and of using firearms and destructive devices. But the story of Ivan Morales does not end there. Ivan Morales Corrales, a former sub-officer of Mexico's now-defunct federal police, and the sole survivor of the 2015 attack by the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, was fatally shot in Temixco, Morelos. Morales had been part of a police operation aimed at capturing Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, during which a helicopter carrying officers was shot down. In 2024, Morales testified in the United States against El Menchito. He survived a helicopter being blown out of the sky. He survived burns over 70% of his body. He survived 15 surgeries. He flew to the United States to testify against the man who ordered his helicopter shot down. And in April 2025, Ivan Morales Corrales was killed. On April 30, 2025, at approximately 8 a.m. in the Las Brisas neighborhood of Temixco, Morelos, he was traveling with a woman, reportedly his wife, in a vehicle, when they were intercepted and shot by a group of armed men. Both Morales and the woman died at the scene. CJNG assassinated Ivan Morales Corrales, a witness who had testified against El Mencho's son Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez during El Menchito's trial in the United States. The CJNG's message was unmistakable: testify against us, and no matter how long it takes, we will find you. Perhaps the most remarkable chapter in El Menchito's story is how many times he slipped through the hands of justice in Mexico. It is a saga that exposes the cracks in the Mexican legal system and raises uncomfortable questions about corruption, influence, and the long reach of the CJNG. The son of the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel has been arrested 3 times and released twice by Mexico's justice system, highlighting the difficulties authorities face in mounting viable cases against alleged high-level cartel members. The first arrest came in January 2014. At 3:30 a.m. on 30 January, the Special Forces Unit raided a residence in the Patria Universidad neighborhood and discovered Oseguera Gonzalez sleeping there. As the authorities took down the doors, Oseguera Gonzalez woke up from the loud noise and jumped from his bed, ran to his backyard, and climbed the back wall to reach his neighbor's property. However, the Special Forces unit successfully surrounded the premises and reduced Oseguera Gonzalez's escape options. He eventually submitted and was arrested in his neighbor's backyard. At the crime scene, authorities confiscated several weapons, including 2 customized AR-15 assault rifles engraved with the insignias CJNG-02JR and Menchito. According to government sources, Oseguera Gonzalez was trying to keep a low profile and had undergone a nose surgery to alter his identity. He traveled without bodyguards to avoid attracting attention from law enforcement. He even reportedly offered the officers around 17 million Mexican pesos to let him go. They refused. He was taken to a maximum security prison. And then, in October 2014, something happened that defied logic. On the 16th of October 2014, Oseguera Gonzalez was released from Altiplano, but he was rearrested immediately as he walked out of prison. He was released because a judge from the state of Mexico absolved him from the following crimes: illegal possession of firearms, having weapons of military exclusive use, use of resources from illicit origins, and crimes against public health. He was rearrested upon release and sent back. Then in December, on 26th of December, Oseguera Gonzalez was released from prison again, after a judge concluded that there was insufficient evidence against him for the charges of drug trafficking, overseeing the CJNG's financial operations, and leading a group of hitmen. The man whose AR-15s were literally engraved with CJNG-02JR and Menchito was released because there was insufficient evidence. He walked free, and predictably, at the time of his next arrest, he was wanted for organized crime involvement, using resources from illicit origins, and kidnapping. The government alleged that when Oseguera Gonzalez was released from prison the year before, he rejoined the CJNG and began managing their international drug trafficking operations. He was arrested again in June 2015, and once again, a judge ordered his release. On July 2015, a federal judge from the state of Mexico ordered Oseguera Gonzalez's release, after concluding that the evidence against him was insufficient and that his due process had been violated. The judge stated that when Oseguera Gonzalez was arrested in June, the officers did not have an arrest warrant against him and entered his private property without legal authorization. He also stated that the detainee was in custody for 9 hours and without a lawyer before he was sent to the Justice Department. When the judge considered that authorities had failed to prove that Oseguera Gonzalez was involved in organized crime, he was released. This was the 3rd time he had been released in less than a year. 3 arrests, 3 releases, in under 12 months. Each time, prosecutors scrambled to refile charges before he could disappear into the Mexican countryside. However, as Oseguera Gonzalez was walked out of Altiplano, he was rearrested by the PGR, who had a pending arrest warrant against him. But this last time, the American government was already waiting. On 3 February 2017, the United States District Court for the District of Columbia issued an arrest warrant against Oseguera Gonzalez. The Drug Enforcement Administration stated that he had been involved in importing and distributing narcotics from Mexico to the U.S. since 2011. The U.S. extradition request was filed. The Mexican courts could play their games, but the Americans were done watching. Even from inside a Mexican maximum security prison, El Menchito refused to stop operating. While in prison in Mexico, Oseguera Gonzalez continued to control the CJNG, negotiating drug transactions and approving the purchase of firearms and destructive devices, including .50 caliber firearms and 40mm grenades. Walls did not contain him. Guards did not stop him. He ran the cartel from a cell like a CEO running a corporation from a corner office. The walls finally closed in on February 20th, 2020, when the Justice Department's Office of International Affairs secured the extradition of Oseguera Gonzalez, and he was flown from Mexico to Washington, D.C. No more sympathetic judges, no more midnight releases, no more engraved AR-15s. He was now in the jurisdiction of the United States federal court system, a system that had spent years building its case against him while Mexico's courts let him walk free again and again. The trial took place in September 2024 in U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. A federal jury convicted Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, also known as El Menchito, of conspiring to distribute 5 kilograms or more of cocaine and 500 grams or more of methamphetamine. while knowing and intending that they would be imported into the United States and using, carrying, and brandishing firearms, including destructive devices, in furtherance of the drug trafficking conspiracy, following a 2-week jury trial. One of the most striking moments of that trial was the testimony about his arrest in June 2015, the one that came weeks after the helicopter shootdown. Less than 2 months after escaping capture, Osguera Gonzalez was arrested in Jalisco, Mexico. When he was surrounded by soldiers and police, he brandished an assault weapon and grenade launcher, demanding to be released because he was a member of the CJNG. The weapon Osguera Gonzalez used to threaten police bore the same pixel camouflage pattern and was emblazoned with CJNG and Osguera Gonzalez's nicknames, Menchito, Du, and Juhour. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He held up a grenade launcher with his own name on it and told the Mexican military to let him go. That is the behavior of a man who believed, with good reason, given his track record, that he was untouchable. On March 7, 2025, the sentence came down. A U.S.-Mexican dual national and co-founder of the Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación was sentenced in the District of Columbia to a term of life in prison, plus 30 years to run consecutively, for his role in a major drug trafficking conspiracy, and ordered to forfeit over $6 billion of drug trafficking proceeds. Pronouncing the life sentence, District Judge Beryl Howell said Jalisco New Generation was a notoriously violent cartel and that Osguera had a whole team of hitmen at his command. He had his own private army, the Special Forces of the High Command, which he used to protect himself, eliminate rivals, and wage war against the Mexican state. The DEA's acting administrator, Derek Maltz, was even more direct at sentencing. Menchito was not only extremely violent, he was also one of the earliest architects of fentanyl trafficking that led to the deadliest chapter of the synthetic opioid crisis and responsible for flooding the country with methamphetamine. This country is undoubtedly safer now that he will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Less than a year later, El Menchito's imprisonment played its final card from behind bars. On the 22nd of February 2026, Osguera was seriously injured during a Mexican military operation in Tapalpa, Jalisco, and died en route to Mexico City from his gunshot wounds. El Mencho was killed, and with his son in a U.S. prison, the line of succession was shattered. The security consultant David Saucedo told CNN that the line of succession has been ruined, and no apparent family successor exists. The line of inheritance, on which El Mencho took 15 years to build, has broken down, as his biological son named El Menchito was serving life prison in the United States. On March 18, 2026, the Wall Street Journal reported that Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, El Mencho's stepson through his marriage, was now the CJNG's new leader. The empire El Mencho built and El Menchito supercharged did not pass to its intended heir. It passed to a stepson, someone described internally as 03, because 02 is locked in a U.S. federal prison cell with a life sentence and a $6 billion forfeiture judgment hanging over his head. El Mencho was a drug lord who rose from avocado fields in California jail cells to become one of the most wanted men on the planet. He was a strategist, a builder, a man who avoided cameras and avoided confrontation when he could. His son was different. His son killed with his own hands. His son ordered a military helicopter shot out of the sky. His son pioneered the fentanyl trade that is currently the deadliest drug threat the United States has ever faced. His son ran the cartel from inside a maximum security prison and ordered the purchase of .50 caliber weapons and 40mm grenades while behind bars. His son slashed the throats of 5 bound men and asked for a clean shirt afterward. His son was released 3 times by Mexican judges and arrested 4 times before anyone could make a charge stick. El Mencho built the CJNG. El Menchito weaponized it, and now both are gone from the board. One dead, the other locked away forever, leaving behind a cartel in chaos, a fentanyl crisis still raging, and a trail of destruction that stretches from the mountains of Jalisco to the streets of every American city.